During the Broncos bye week, we were blessed with some NFL news and kind of what I like to call Mile High 2.0 down there in New Orleans, because let's be completely honest, Mickey Loomis still loves Sean Payton. Welcome in Broncos country to the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. My name is Moose. On today's episode, should the Denver Broncos go out and make one final move to get Brandin Cooks? I don't know yet, Jim. I don't know, Jim. But here's what I will say. If the Broncos were going to make a final move, especially for Brandin Cooks, there definitely is the history there between him and Sean Payton. Now, before we break down why it might make sense, why it might not make sense, if you love the daily Denver Broncos content, if you're a super fan and you love getting the daily, fresh, entertaining content that we provide, do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon right freaking now. Let's talk a little bit about Brandin Cooks here, because he was a wide receiver recently released by the New Orleans Saints. Now, this was a mutual decision between him and the Saints, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, his best days are behind him. Does that mean that he can't go off any particular game? Of course not. Any given Sunday league, remember? But he was drafted by Sean Payton in the first round of the 2014 draft. So this is what, year 11, year 12 for him? 9,600 career receiving yards in 11 seasons, and he's known best for when he's got the ball in his hands, that yak ability. He's awesome in that area. Now, let's just go back really quick. Let's rewind the clock for a second. Let's go back to the last 4 seasons. 227 receptions, 2,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 11.6 average. So let's just do quick math here. 5 touchdowns a year. He's averaging damn near 700 yards a season. And then the last, well, how many receptions is that, Alper? 60? Yeah, somewhere around there. 60-ish. So, look, he's good for a decent wide receiver 2, probably a really good wide receiver 3. But everybody agrees that he is past his prime, myself included. I don't think that he's got any of those huge type of production years left. But with Sean Payton, it could work. And there's a reason I say this, not as a wide receiver 2, not even as a wide receiver 3. But what I believe Brandin Cooks could add here is quite literally what I like to call the distractor. But first, let's break down what the wide receiver depth chart looks like. He's not going to surpass Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, or Pat Bryant. In fact, I think what we saw from Pat Bryant deserves a little bit more of a look in the offense come week 13 against the Washington Commanders. But remember, I called him the distractor. And there's a big-time statistic out there that kind of proves that he's out there just doing it for the love of the game. I'll explain a little bit here in just a little bit. But let's talk about his quarterbacks for a second. The Saints are a dumpster fire. They are an absolutely awful team. Terrible. And their 2 quarterbacks, while both very, very young and have some room to grow, are not very good. Tyler Shuck is your current starting number 1. He just had his first really good game against the Carolina Panthers. And Spencer Rattler, who got benched for Shuck. So clearly, we can at least acknowledge that even though Brandin Cooks' best days might be behind him, how much of this is because the Saints just are terrible? But remember I told you about that for the love of the game stat. There's a guy named Matt Harmon out there that I really, really like to kind of follow on X because he gives us a lot of cool insights and cool statistics that you might not have thought of before. And here's what he was said in his most recent tweet yesterday. Cooks wasn't getting a lot of targets, but he was running a lot of routes, what he likes to call the love of the game route. In this offense at full speed, what he was doing was creating outside leverage and space for Chris Olave. So, as he just put, unironically interested to see who takes on that role. Because Brandin Cooks realizes, hey, I'm not going to be the focal point of any other offense. But what can I do? I can get a ring by being the distractor. And he did a really good job of being a distraction. Look at his target share rate amongst all other routes run. More than 150 routes run in the NFL. He's number 1 in the worst target share rate in the NFL. Now, you could look at that and go, Moose, why are you showing us such a bad statistic? because what he's doing is creating that open space for other wide receivers. Courtland Sutton, Marvin Mims, Troy Franklin, who's already a great route runner, and then Pat Bryant. It's not a need. You wouldn't go out and absolutely need to make this signing, but it could help players like Pat Bryant, Courtland Sutton, and Marvin Mims create more separation. And what's the one area right now that everybody's been kind of clamoring for, especially with Courtland Sutton? They're like, dude, get open more. We need to feed you. Bo Nix needs to feed you. One thing that I'll give Troy Franklin a lot of credit for is he's an unbelievable route runner. He's got such quick feet off the line of scrimmage. He's always going to get open. He might not always catch the ball, but at least he's always getting open. Courtland Sutton has better hands, but it kind of shows you that he's not quite getting as much separation as possible. You add a player like Brandin Cooks out on the field, you're going to automatically create more separation because you're going to have to throw an extra body, an extra defensive back on Brandin Cooks. So for that reason, I wouldn't be opposed to signing him. I might like it. I'm typing my S for sign. If you think no, if we're already set, I totally get that as well. You can type your P for pass down in the comment section down below. By the way, with the money of everything, he only costs right now about $2.5 million. The Saints have already paid about half of his salary in 2025. He's super cheap. Now, coming up, it might not make sense for Denver to go out and make this signing. I personally just gave you why I think it could work, but I would be a fool and not doing my job to tell you why it wouldn't make sense for Denver. Now, before I do that, I got to tell you about our friends over at Harry's. Look, see this beard? This is like 4 days of growth for Moose. I'm literally the hairiest guy you know. But not just the hairiest guy you know. I personally use Harry's every single morning, whether I'm shaving my back, my arms, or my face. And I personally trust Harry's with my daily grooming habits. Did your old razor cost way too much? Did it dull way too fast? Let's be completely honest. $30 for 8 refills is a total scam. Harry's Plus now has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face with refined blade technology for a closer, smoother shave and a weighted metal handle. With Harry's Plus, you get a barbershop quality shave with German engineered blades. Each blade is honed at 3 different angles to cut hair cleanly at the root without tugging. So why would you pay $30 for refills when Harry's gives you better blades for a fraction of the cost? Harry's has launched their most advanced razor ever and is still cheaper than the Gillette Fusion 5. For a limited time, our listeners can get Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com with code CHAT. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, a 1 refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after you purchase, they're going to ask, hey, where'd you hear about us? Please support our show and tell the Moose from the Broncos Breakdown sent you. So, the one area, and probably the biggest area, why it does not make sense for the Denver Broncos to sign Brandin Cooks is because they're currently dead last in the waiver wire order. Because of the record. That's how it works. It's the inverse of your record. So, the worst team in the NFL, statistically speaking, or record-wise, I should say, they have first bid on all of the waiver claims. That's kind of how it works, kind of like fantasy football. So the Broncos are way, way down there. So is it likely that 31 other teams are going to pass on Brandin Cooks? No, it's not. And Broncos Sports Illustrated, they feel the exact same way. Here's what they had to say. It wouldn't be a total shock if the Broncos were to claim Cooks, but he'd have to make it all the way to them in the waiver wire order. That's a big if because the Broncos are 9-2, which is currently the best record in the NFL, and are the number 1 seed in the AFC. Now, if Cooks does make it all the way down to the Broncos on waivers, would it make sense to claim him or let him pass through and negotiate a late season contract to bring him in? It would definitely depend on whether Sean Payton actually covets Cooks, which is no guarantee because of his age and the Broncos' current roster math and the in-season balancing act that is. So, there's a second reason. It's not just the waiver wire order. You'd also have to delegate a player from the 53-man roster. That's how it works. You sign a player to the active 53, you got to send someone back down to the practice squad. Now, that's not necessarily the biggest issue because I've highlighted at least 3 players that were moved up or recently signed that you could end up moving back down to the practice squad if you absolutely wanted to sign Brandin Cooks. Those players are as follows: Reese Taylor, Jaron Christian, and Garrett Wallow. Garrett Wallow, I probably wouldn't, only because we need the interior linebacker depth. But Reese Taylor or Jaron Christian, I probably would. Especially if that was the move you presented me with. Hey, get Brandin Cooks out on the field or one of these guys on the bench. It's a no-brainer. But I'm not the only Broncos content creator that's talking about this. I've seen a ton of different people, including my guy Zach Stevens, who also were throwing the little eyeball emojis. Sean Payton drafted Brandin Cooks. There's a reason he went out and drafted him. He saw something in Brandin Cooks. And now that he's available, do you think that Sean Payton is making calls? Do you think that he's, kind of poking his head around and just maybe kind of feeling out where all the other teams are? Maybe that's a George Payton call. Either way, I think it's at least interesting to talk about, especially during the bye week. This could be the perfect time you bring him in. He would have all week to go in and prep in this offense and then get on the field with the Broncos against the Commanders. So, Brandin Cook is officially released. He's no longer with the Saints. And could this be a move for Mile High? We'll have to wait and see. But here's what I do know. Even though Brandin Cooks is up in the air, what is not up in the air is that we are going to be live this Sunday with the added addition. We are going to be going live for Colts and Chiefs, but we will also be bouncing back and forth between Patriots and Bengals. Why? Because Joe Burrow is officially back. And that means they have a chance to beat the 9-2 Patriots. So we're going to keep our eyes on these two games specifically. That's going to about do it for us on today's episode. A reminder to hit that subscribe button, like today's video if you haven't. And as always, Broncos country, Mile High salute. Be cool.